problem to deal with. Giving anticholinergics causes other problems. Why? Why would that cause problems?
Because it's everywhere in your body, your muscles, your...
Well, your neuromuscular junction is acetylcholine. You know, your autonomic nervous system, major neurotransmitter, acetylcholine. That's got to be dealt with very, very cautiously. So, you know, it's dealing with these disorders, balancing the drug treatments is really a complicated problem. So let's look at some other issues. Tourette syndrome. How many of you know Tourette syndrome? What do you know about Tourette syndrome? What? Twitches? Lots of what?
Is it yelling? I'm thinking of color.
Okay.
They can't control what they're saying, they can't control...
Right. These are all referred to as tics. Yeah, the twitch is a tic. The verbal tic. We had a, over in River Ducks Sciences, we had a student who had Tourette syndrome. And when you're working in research, this can be an issue. When his tic was, he'd walk along. Ah! Literally. He would hop and do that. Ah! I worked with radioactivity. I said, okay, here's the situation. When you see me in my lab I'm gowned up, you may not enter. Because the last thing you want to do is startle me when I'm going to stab you with a hot needle. Because I will stab you and it will be intentional. So, yes. Tourette appears to actually have problems with the striatal nuclei, so that you know, movement is so flipping complicated. Getting these smooth movements and all of these tics, these facial tics and everything, those are movement disorders. And with movement disorders, it just gets outrageously bizarre. Tourette's. So, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Some forms, if not all, appear to have damage to the putamen or caudate nuclei. So once again, putamen caudate. Oh, the striatum. Yes, we're back to the striatum. Striatum is, if you are confronted with a question and you are totally lost, and one of the choices is striatum, pick it. Okay, you're already lost, so it tends to be a safe answer. How could this lead to hyperactivity? Problems here. Oh, if we knock out some inhibition, we're going to have hyper-responses. We're going to have an increase in how responses are. Or you might have a decreased response time. Decreased response time can be interpreted as hyperactive. I mean, most of you, as you go to do something, you have some thought process that goes on, whether it is conscious thought or subconscious thought. You know, oh, I'm writing. Now, if you lose control over that so that your response time is like that, you're just doing crazy. You're crazy. I don't imply that. You're doing hyperactive responses. Does that make some sense? Do you see why there could? Yeah.
How is it different from just without the activity, the hyperactivity disorder? It's just ADD. I know we keep changing the diagnosis on those.
I think it's best to think of them all together. Attention deficit is a form of hyperactivity. So I think you can pretty safely, outside of a psych class, lump these all together. Yeah. So. Dystonia. Dystonia frequently will involve distorted positioning. You know, people that are kind of stuck in funny positions. Putamen, globus pallus interior. Okay, so we have some problems. Cerebral palsy. It always amazes me. I think over the years, I'm anticipating sneezing. Over the years, I've probably had half a dozen students in neuroanatomy who have cerebral palsy. And typically, what do you know about cerebral palsy? Know anything?
Can happen at birth, during birth.
Typically, cerebral palsy tends to be premotor or motor areas of the cortex that are damaged in some way. That damage can come about by pre-delivery oxygenation problems. That's one cause.
Is it lack of oxygen?
Yes. It can come about by exposure pre-delivery once again, so placental exposure to viruses, which is why we hate to see pregnant women get sick. Okay, it's not because they're uncomfortable, it's not because they're miserable, it's not because they're in pain or no, because weird things are happening to the kid that's growing, to the fetus. It can happen with viral disorders early postpartum, so after delivery. All of those probably account, those three causes, probably account for, maybe half the cases. The other half are traumatic deliveries, where somehow or other damage happened to the motor cortices, or to one of the cortices, or to one cortex, or something. It can be temporary lack of oxygen. That tends to have more global outcomes. But we talked earlier in the semester about epidural anesthesia. Well, with epidural anesthesia, sometimes there's a lack of muscle power for pushing. Therefore, the delivery takes longer. Baby may be stuck in a position where it can't come out. And we hear of forceps deliveries. Forceps deliveries essentially is using tools to help get the kid out. If the kid is stuck coming out, you can't do a C-section at that point. So, there's problems. So, cerebral palsy is frontal cortical damage. Foreign accent syndrome. Does anybody know foreign accent syndrome? Have you heard of it? No. You? No, not even close. I hope. Wow, never thought of that. Maybe you're right. How many of you have heard of people that have like a stroke and are all of a sudden talking with a foreign accent? You heard of that? Yeah, that's bullshit. Okay. There is something affecting the signals from the basal ganglia through the cortex and to Broca's area, so that the person is talking in what sounds like a foreign accent. In other words, they have affected speech that to an untrained ear sounds like a foreign accent. But everybody who speaks with a foreign accent kind of looks at the person and goes, I have no idea what accent that is, because it's not. It's a very bizarre syndrome that comes about from disruption of the signaling somewhere between the basal ganglia and Broca's. It's going to be amazing in your careers how many of these things you will run into, and how many other things you'll run into that we're not even going to come across. Farr's disease. Calcification of the basal ganglia and motor cortex. Calcification. Huh. Why should your, okay, so it's a genetic dominant trait. So why should your brain be susceptible to calcification?
Calcium is required to release the synaptic vesicles.
Right. You can't have neuronal signaling without calcium. Your brain is a calcium sink. It's full of calcium. And if you have some problems, it comes out of solution. If it comes out of solution, you get calcification. Little stones in your brain. Movement issues, all sorts of movement issues. You may have loss of movement function ultimately. So, but it's kind of mild. How many of you know Wilson's disease? That's another cool one. Is that what? Oh, it's just copper buildup, period. Yes, one of the symptoms is drop dead gorgeous eyes. All right? Oh yeah, come on, you see, get a little bit of that copper color in your eyes. They're going to sparkle in a really cool way. And, you may want to consider not having a long-term relationship with somebody like that because they're going to die. But Wilson's disease affects copper metabolism. And one of the symptoms is the buildup of copper in your iris. But it also builds up in the putamen and globus pallidus, which is going to destroy signaling. Why should that destroy signaling? Because electric signals that run through copper get totally buggered. So you're going to really totally screw up signaling till death do you part.
So there isn't really any treatment for that?
I would think that the treatment for that is going to be chelation therapy. So with chelation therapy, you can remove all heavy metals. So, yeah. I mean, that's what you would do for lead. That's what you would do for iron toxicity, nickel toxicity, any of those. So you would actually undergo chelation. Athermormic syndrome. I love that name. That is just like one of the coolest names. Crazy disorder. Limbic channel. Ooh, limbic channel. Remember that? No? We talked about it the other day.
Yeah.
Through the striatum and globus pallidus is damaged. Loss of motivation and executive function, leading to complete apathy. We have all had that day where we said,